The storm had finally passed, but the night sky was still filled with floating dust and glowing particles that made everything look blurry and strange. The medic stepped out of her small shelter, carefully scanning the horizon. She had been working for days without proper rest, helping people who were hurt during the meteor impact. Her hands were tired, her back hurt, and her medical bag felt lighter than ever. Still, she could not ignore the strange signal that kept flashing on her scanner, that it wasn't a human distress call. It was something unfamiliar, something she had never seen on her device before. The signal blinked slowly, again and again, almost like a heartbeat. She felt a small chill, not fear exactly, but a feeling that something important was waiting for her. She walked toward the direction of the signal, moving across the rocky ground that still smelled like burnt metal. The air was cold, and every step made a crunching sound. Halfway there, she stopped when she noticed a deep cut in the earth. It looked like something had crashed and slid through the rocks, leaving a long trail of destruction behind it. Her scanner beeped louder. The signal was coming from inside that ravine. She climbed down carefully, steadying herself on the rough edges. Loose stones fell and echoed below. When she finally reached the bottom, she saw a shape hidden behind a large chunk of broken metal. At first, it looked like part of a ship, but as she got closer, she realized it was a ship, or what was left of one. Alien designs covered the outside. The panels were cracked, as if they had been hit by something powerful. Sparks flickered weakly from the sides, lighting the dark space with a faint blue glow. Her heart raced. She had heard stories about unknown travelers, but she never expected to find their ship like this. She swallowed hard and moved forward. Near the broken entrance, she saw something lying on the ground. She pointed her light at it, and her breath caught in her throat. It was a creature. A small one, curled up tightly, its body covered in icy dust. It looked like it had dragged itself out of the ship before collapsing. Its scales shimmered with soft green and silver, but they were cracked in some places, and its wings were stiff and trembling. Its breathing was shallow, almost invisible. She froze for a moment. She wasn't sure what she was looking at. It had a long neck, delicate claws, and a tail wrapped around its body, like it was trying to keep itself warm. The creature looked like a dragon from old stories, but much smaller and fragile. She knelt beside it and checked her scanner again. The device blinked in confusion, unable to read the creature's vital signs. She placed her ear near its chest. The heartbeat was faint, slow, and uneven. Too weak, too cold, she whispered softly, almost without thinking, as if the creature could hear her. "Hey, stay with me." The creature's eyelid twitched. It wasn't fully awake, but it was alive. Her training kicked in. She removed her gloves and felt its skin. It was freezing. Hypothermia, shock, severe dehydration, possibly internal injuries. It needed warmth, fluids, and proper care. And time was running out. Her mind worked fast, but her heart was already ahead of her. She couldn't leave it here. She couldn't just walk away and pretend she never saw it. Even though she didn't know what species it was, one thing was clear. It was dying. She slipped her arms under its body and lifted gently. The creature was lighter than she expected, but its scales were stiff and sharp in some places. She held it close to her chest, letting her own body heat warm it a little. The creature made a small sound, a soft, broken hum, but didn't resist. She climbed out of the ravine with slow, steady movements, careful not to slip. Every now and then, she checked the creature to make sure it was still breathing. When she reached the surface, the cold night air hit her again, but she kept walking, holding the creature tightly. The path back to her tent felt longer than before. The winds were getting stronger, and the ground shook with the aftershocks of the earlier meteor strikes. She moved quickly, shielding the small dragon-like creature with her arms and body, When she finally reached her emergency tent, she pushed the flap open with her shoulder and entered. The small heater inside filled the space with a faint warmth. She laid the creature on a blanket, then grabbed another and wrapped it gently around its body. The creature's eyes flickered again, but still didn't fully open. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're safe now." She took out her medical scanner and tried again, but it still couldn't process the creature's biology. She could only rely on her basic medical knowledge and her instincts. She checked the creature's breathing, cleaned some minor wounds, and removed bits of debris caught between its scales. Then she saw something worrying. Its pulse was weakening. Too slow, too shallow. Its chest rose only slightly with each breath. The creature was slipping into deep shock. Her heart tightened. She reached for her medical bag and quickly searched through it. Bandages, antiseptic spray, pain suppressants, energy tablets. And one last item. A small injector filled with adrenaline. The last one she had. She stared at it for a long moment. This shot was meant for humans in critical condition. It could start a failing heart, boost blood pressure, and stabilize someone long enough for transport. But she had used the rest of her supply over the past few days helping injured workers and survivors. This was all she had left. If she used it on this unknown creature, she wouldn't have it in case a human needed it later. And she didn't even know how the dragon's body would react. It could help, or it could make things worse. She looked at the creature again. Its breathing was almost non-existent now. Its body twitched weakly. Its tail loosened as if it no longer had the strength to keep itself wrapped for warmth. Her chest ached. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. She moved closer and placed her hand gently on its head. The creature didn't move away. It didn't have the strength. It was fighting for life, but losing quickly. She whispered, "I don't know if this will help you, but I can't just watch you die." She took a deep breath, picked up the injector, and pressed it against the creature's chest, just below the scales where she felt the faint heartbeat. With a firm but careful push, she released the shot. The reaction was immediate and intense. The creature's body jolted, its wings twitching hard enough to push the blankets aside. The small lights in the tent flickered as if reacting to the sudden surge of energy in the air. For a moment, she feared she had made a mistake, but then the creature's heartbeat began to strengthen. Slow at first, then steadier. Its breathing deepened. The trembling eased. She placed her hand on its chest and felt a warmth returning bit by bit. Relief washed over her, but she didn't let herself relax completely. Anything could happen. She scooted closer, sitting beside the creature, keeping her eyes on its rising and falling chest. Minutes passed, then hours. She stayed awake the whole time, watching, adjusting the blanket, checking its temperature, whispering calm words whenever it twitched in its sleep. At one point, the creature moved its head slightly toward her and released a tiny, weak chirp that sounded almost like gratitude. Her exhaustion finally caught up with her, and her eyelids felt heavy. She didn't want to fall asleep, but her body gave out. She leaned back slightly, still keeping one hand close to the creature's side. Just before her eyes closed, she saw its tail move. Not in pain, not in fear. It gently curled toward her arm, as if trying to stay connected. Then she drifted into a light, uneasy sleep beside the creature she had just saved with the last of her strength and her last shot. Morning light slowly crept through the thin fabric of the emergency tent. The medic stirred awake, feeling the ache in her shoulders and back from sleeping on the hard floor. Her eyes immediately went to the small creature beside her. The faint glow of the morning sun reflected off its scales, making them shimmer with soft green and silver. It was awake now, blinking slowly, and its chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. Relief washed over her, but there was still worry in her heart. She sat up carefully, making sure not to disturb it. The creature moved slightly, its small head lifting to watch her. Its eyes were wide and curious, though still cautious. Even though it looked weak, there was something intelligent and alert in its gaze. She had never seen anything like it before. She had treated humans with broken bones, burns, and infections, but nothing like this. Its anatomy was unfamiliar. Its biology was unlike anything on Earth. Yet she knew it was alive and vulnerable. She reached for her medical scanner again, hoping for a reading, but the device remained confused. It could not identify the creature's vitals. Her heart sank a little. She had to rely entirely on her instincts, her training, and her observation. Carefully, she checked the creature's pulse by feeling its neck. It was steady now, but weaker than it should be for its size. She gently touched its chest and noticed that its breathing was shallow. The medic knew that being stable for the moment did not mean it was safe. Shock can last for hours, even after an adrenaline shot. The creature needed more health fluids, warmth, nutrition, but she didn't even know what would be safe for it to consume. She searched her supplies. She had protein pastes, rehydration packs, antiseptics, and pain suppressants designed for humans. Nothing specifically for alien biology. She hesitated, knowing that giving the wrong thing could harm it, but she couldn't just wait. The creature needed care now. She decided to start with warmth and gentle hydration. She prepared a small dropper with water, testing it first. The creature watched her carefully, its head tilting slightly as she offered a few drops. Slowly, it lapped at the liquid. Encouraged, she continued, making sure not to overwhelm it. Next, she inspected the minor injuries. Its scales were cracked in places, and a few cuts were oozing faint blood. She cleaned them gently, applying antiseptic sparingly. She marveled at how delicate the creature's skin felt under the rough outer scales. It flinched at first, but soon relaxed, as if it understood she was not a threat. The medic realized something important. She could not just treat it like a patient to be stabilized. She had to earn its trust. The creature's reactions were subtle, but there was intelligence behind them. It noticed her movements, her voice, and the small gestures of care. She began speaking softly, explaining what she was doing, even though she knew it might not understand words. "You're safe here," she whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you. Just rest a little." The creature blinked, and its tail twitched slightly toward her, a small sign of acknowledgement. She smiled, feeling a mixture of relief and fascination. Hours passed as she continued to observe and care for it. She monitored its breathing, adjusted its blanket, and checked its temperature by feeling its body. She realized she was learning to read it like a human patient, but also as a living being with emotions. Every twitch, every small movement, told her something about its condition. But despite these small victories, she knew there were bigger dangers. Its heart was still weak, and its body had clearly gone through trauma beyond what she could see. Hypothermia could return if she didn't maintain warmth, and dehydration could become critical. She needed a plan, but the resources at her disposal were limited. She examined her medical bag again. She had a few remaining vials of basic medication and one last booster shot, but she hesitated. This was similar to the adrenaline shot she had given last night. She had no idea how this new medication would affect the creature. A human might survive it, but an alien dragon? There were no precedents, no case studies. It was a life-or-death gamble. As she thought, the creature stirred again. It tried to rise slightly, but collapsed. She caught it gently, realizing that it lacked the strength to support itself. She cradled it in her arms, holding it close to provide warmth. "You're stronger than you look," she said softly. "We'll get you through this." Time slowed as she worked. She fed it small amounts of water, kept it wrapped in blankets, and spoke to it calmly. Occasionally, she would rest her hand on its head, feeling the faint pulse and marveling at the resilience of this being. Despite its injuries, it was fighting to survive. She also took notes, sketching the creature's features and making mental notes of its reactions. Its wings were folded tightly against its back, and she could see faint scars on the membranes. Its tail twitched in rhythm with its shallow breathing, almost like a heartbeat of its own. Its eyes followed her every move, and sometimes they glowed faintly in the dim light of the tent. The more she observed, the more she understood that this creature was not just alive. It was aware. It reacted to her tone, to the gentle movements of her hands, and to the warmth she provided. For the first time, she felt a deep connection to a being completely different from herself, but she also felt the weight of responsibility. If she made one mistake, it could die. She could not call for backup because no one would know how to handle an alien dragon. Even if the research team arrived later, it could be too late. She was alone, and she had to rely on her skills and instincts. She considered the fact that she had only one chance to stabilize it fully. The adrenaline shot had worked temporarily, but now she needed to maintain its body functions through careful observation, warmth, and hydration. Every minor action mattered. If she moved too quickly, if she gave it too much water, or if she lost patience, the consequences could be fatal. Hours turned into what felt like a full day. She scarcely allowed herself to eat or drink, focusing entirely on the creature. She noticed that it sometimes shivered even under blankets, so she wrapped additional layers around it. She monitored its color, its breathing, its small twitches. Slowly, very slowly, it began to regain strength. At one point, it shifted slightly, stretching one wing as if testing its own strength. She watched closely, holding her breath. The movement was minor, but it was progress. Encouraged, she helped it reposition slightly so it would be more comfortable. She realized that her role was not just a medic in the traditional sense. She had become a guardian. She was protecting this fragile life with every decision she made, using her experience, her knowledge, and her intuition. Every touch, every word, every careful movement mattered. Night fell again, but this time it felt different. The creature was still weak, but its breathing was steadier. It stayed close to her, sometimes resting its head on her arm. She knew it was beginning to trust her, something she had never experienced with any patient before. There was a silent understanding between them, an acknowledgement that she was there to help, and it was willing to accept help, exhausted but relieved. She sat beside it, keeping her hand on its chest, listening to the soft thump of its heartbeat. She knew that the next day would bring new challenges, feeding, strengthening, and learning how to care for a being so different from herself. But for now, she allowed herself a quiet moment of connection. As she watched the creature drift into a light sleep, she felt a mixture of hope and responsibility. She had saved its life once with her last adrenaline shot, but now she had to continue guiding it through its recovery. The bond forming between them was delicate, built on trust and shared survival. And even though she didn't know what the future would hold, she felt certain of one thing: this small, fragile dragon had changed her life, just as she had changed its. The night was silent, except for the faint hum of the emergency tent's heater and the occasional whistle of wind outside. The medic sat on the floor, leaning against the side of the tent, her eyes fixed on the small dragon-like creature that rested on the blankets. Its chest rose and fell with steadier breaths than last night, but it was still weak. Every now and then, it twitched or let out a tiny sound that was somewhere between a squeak and a hum. She had never heard anything like it before. Her medical bag lay open beside her, and her hands hovered over the instruments as if waiting for a sign. She had done all she could for, now kept it warm, hydrated, and cleaned its wounds. But she knew the adrenaline shot from the previous night had only given it a temporary boost. The creature needed more than temporary care. It needed stabilization, and there was no guidebook for this. She studied it carefully, trying to understand how its body reacted to her touch, her voice, and even her breathing. Every small change mattered. The dragon's eyes flicked open, catching the faint light. They glowed softly, green and curious, but still wary. The medic smiled gently. "You're stronger today," she whispered. "Little by little, we'll get there." The creature made a small, low hum, and she took it as an acknowledgement. It was subtle, but it felt significant. She reached for the small syringe of nutrients she had prepared earlier. It was a mixture of vitamins and minerals designed for humans, diluted enough that it would not harm a human child. She had no idea if it would help the dragon, but it needed energy. She held it carefully near its mouth, and at first the creature recoiled slightly. Its instincts were sharp, and it was still cautious. She spoke softly, letting her voice carry calmness. "It's okay. This will help you. Just a little sip." Slowly, the dragon opened its mouth and took a tiny sip. She let it rest for a moment, watching its reaction. Then she offered another, and another. By the end, it had consumed a few drops, enough to give it some energy without overwhelming its system. She felt a quiet relief, knowing that each small success was important. She noticed that the creature's wings, which had been stiff and folded tightly, now twitched more freely. She reached out carefully, brushing a finger along the edge of one wing. The membrane was delicate, like thin leather stretched over a frame, and she marveled at how intricate its structure was. The dragon flinched slightly, but did not pull away. It was learning to trust her. As the hours passed, she realized she could not just sit idly by. She needed to create a more sustainable environment for it. She moved blankets around, creating layers of insulation. She heated a small water bottle and wrapped it in cloth, placing it near the dragon to provide warmth. She adjusted the tent so that the wind would not chill the inside, and she even made a small makeshift nest using spare blankets, so that the creature could curl up safely. She also had to consider its mental state. A creature so fragile and injured could panic easily, and fear could be fatal. She stayed close, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. She whispered to it continuously, telling it was safe, that she would not leave, and that help was coming. She knew that sound mattered as much as touch or food. The voice of a calm, steady human was something she could offer when nothing else was certain. At one point, she noticed the dragon attempting to move. It lifted its head slightly, then collapsed back onto the blankets. She quickly moved closer and held it gently, supporting its body. Its tail twitched lightly against her arm, almost as if it was asking for support. She smiled softly. "You're trying," she said, "and that's what matters." Time felt strange in the tent. Hours merged into one another as she stayed focused on the dragon. She forgot about hunger, about exhaustion, about the aches in her body. Every sense was attuned to its breathing, its slight movements, its tiny sounds. She monitored the rise and fall of its chest, the warmth of its body, and even the tension in its muscles. She could feel the pulse returning to strength, slow but steady. Then a small, almost miraculous thing happened. The dragon opened its eyes fully, focusing on her face. It tilted its head as if recognizing her presence. It lifted a front claw slightly, resting it near her hand. She held it gently, letting her fingers brush against its soft, scaled skin. It was an unspoken connection, a silent acknowledgement of trust. She felt a swell of emotion she had not anticipated: relief, awe, and even joy. She had never experienced anything like this with a human patient, but there was no time to become complacent. She knew the dragon's recovery was still fragile. One mistake, one wrong move, and it could collapse again. She carefully checked its limbs, noting stiffness in the joints and slight swelling near one shoulder. She applied gentle massage, careful not to stress it, and whispered encouragement the whole time. The creature did not pull away. It seemed to respond to her voice, a sign that it was beginning to understand her presence as safe. By midday, she realized that she needed to help it regain strength gradually. She placed a shallow bowl of water within reach, letting it drink freely. She adjusted the blankets so it could shift positions without strain. She also monitored the small injuries, cleaning them carefully and applying antiseptic sparingly. Each touch, each adjustment was made with deliberate care, ensuring she did not cause additional stress or harm. The more time passed, the more she realized how intelligent the dragon was. It observed her movements, reacted to her tone of voice, and seemed to understand when she spoke in a calm, reassuring manner. It responded to her touch, sometimes leaning slightly into her hand or resting its head near her arm. These small gestures were significant. They showed trust, and trust was as important as medicine or warmth in its recovery. Later, she tried to encourage it to stand. She gently lifted it, supporting its body under the chest and hindquarters. The dragon wobbled, struggling to maintain balance, but it made an effort. Its small legs trembled, but it managed to push itself slightly off the blankets before collapsing again. She caught it quickly, holding it close and letting it rest. "That's okay," she said softly. "You're trying. That's enough for now." Exhaustion began to creep in, but she refused to leave its side. She kept monitoring its vitals by touch and observation, noting subtle changes in breathing, posture, and responsiveness. Even the faintest twitch could indicate improvement or danger. She remained alert, her senses focused entirely on the creature. Night returned again, bringing with it the cold air and shadows. She wrapped the dragon in blankets once more, placing it close to her body to provide warmth. She whispered continuously, telling it stories in a calm, soothing voice. It listened, eyes half closed, occasionally making soft, chirping sounds. She realized that her presence was as important as the medical care she provided. The creature needed reassurance, not just medicine. Hours passed into a quiet rhythm. She fed it small sips of water, adjusted its position, and spoke to it softly. Occasionally, it would twitch, stretch slightly, or shift its head toward her, subtle signs of strength returning. She marveled at its resilience. Despite the trauma, the injuries, and the unknown stresses of its crash and exposure, it was still fighting. By the end of the night, the dragon had moved slightly closer to her. It rested its head against her arm, and its breathing was more even. The medic allowed herself a small smile. Progress had been slow, but it had been real. She had saved it once with the adrenaline shot, but now she was helping it regain its strength. Step by step, through patience, observation, and care, she settled beside it, hand resting gently on its chest, feeling the steady thump of its heartbeat. Exhausted but satisfied, she realized that the bond forming between them was deeper than she had expected. It was not just a patient and a healer. It was a fragile, intelligent being placing trust in her, and she was honoring that trust with every careful movement and word. And even though she knew challenges awaited in the coming days, feeding it safely, strengthening it, learning its behaviors, she felt a quiet confidence. Together, they were facing a recovery that no one else could guide. And in that quiet, tense, and fragile moment, a connection was growing that neither of them could have anticipated. The first light of dawn filtered softly through the tent, casting a warm glow over the blankets where the small dragon-like creature rested. The medic stirred awake, her body still sore from nights of little sleep, but her eyes were immediately drawn to the creature. It had changed slightly overnight. Its breathing was steadier, and there was a faint gleam in its eyes that had not been there before. It was awake, but it did not move much. She watched it quietly, careful not to startle it. She could see the tension in its body slowly easing. The dragon's wings twitched slightly, as if testing their strength. Its tail shifted gently, brushing against the blankets in a hesitant rhythm. She reached out slowly, resting her hand near its head. The creature flinched at first, but then allowed her fingers to graze its scales. "You're awake," she whispered softly. "Good morning." The dragon tilted its head, its glowing eyes focusing on her face. There was curiosity there, but also caution. It made a small, broken hum, almost like a greeting. The medic smiled, feeling a flicker of hope. This small sound was more than just a noise. It was communication. The creature was trying to connect with her in the only way it knew how. She leaned closer, careful not to scare it. "I'm here," she said gently. "You're safe. Nothing will hurt you." The dragon blinked slowly, and she noticed it. Began to shift its tiny limbs, attempting to sit up. Its movements were clumsy, wobbly, but determined. She reached out, supporting its small chest with one hand and its back with the other. "Take it slow," she encouraged. "You don't have to rush." The dragon tried again, lifting its head higher, stretching its neck carefully. Its tiny claws dug slightly into the blanket, and its wings flexed weakly. It was obvious that it wanted to move, wanted to stand, but the strength was not fully there yet. She adjusted the blankets around it and held it steady. "You're doing well," she said. "You're stronger than you think." The creature let out a low melodic hum, and the medic could not help but feel a thrill of excitement. This was a living being, injured and afraid, but fighting to regain its strength. She realized that it understood her encouragement in some way. Its small gestures, the flicker of its eyes, the twitch of its tail, the lift of its head showed awareness and responsiveness. She decided it was time to offer a small sip of water. She filled a dropper carefully, bringing it near the creature's mouth. At first, it pulled back, wary of the unfamiliar object. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice calm and steady. "Just a little. You need it." Slowly, it opened its mouth, and she administered a few drops. The creature responded immediately, swallowing carefully. She offered a few more, always giving it time to respond. Gradually, it drank with more confidence. Afterward, she helped it adjust its position, encouraging it to lie more comfortably. Its small claws rested on her hands briefly, almost as if seeking reassurance. She smiled softly, feeling a deepening connection. The creature had survived a disaster, had been abandoned in a frozen ravine, and now it was learning to trust her. That trust was fragile, but it existed, and it mattered more than anything else. She spent the rest of the morning observing its behavior closely. It moved its wings more freely, lifting them slightly and folding them back without effort. It attempted to stretch its legs and tail, testing its balance. Occasionally, it let out soft hums, small but distinct sounds that seemed like expressions of curiosity or comfort. The medic noticed something remarkable. The creature's eyes followed her movements carefully, reacting to her voice and gestures. She realized that it was not only learning to trust her, but it was also learning to understand her presence. Every touch she made, every word she spoke, seemed to reassure it that she was an ally, not a threat. By midday, the dragon was able to lift its head higher and move slightly on its own. She encouraged it gently, holding her hands nearby in case it lost balance. Each small effort was a victory. She provided warmth, hydration, and soft encouragement, combining her medical knowledge with careful observation and patience. The creature started to explore its surroundings tentatively. It sniffed the blankets and nudged small objects, learning to assess its environment. She allowed it to do this, recognizing the importance of regaining mobility and independence. She stayed close, providing guidance and support whenever it needed. She also began to notice patterns in its behavior. When she spoke softly, it remained calm. When she made sudden movements, it flinched or backed away. These small reactions gave her insight into how it perceived the world. She adapted her approach, moving slowly and deliberately, ensuring it felt safe and secure. By evening, the dragon attempted to stand with her support. She held its small body carefully, letting it push against her hands to lift itself. It trembled. Slightly, but with her encouragement, it managed to rise for a few seconds before settling back down. She whispered, "You're doing wonderfully. I'm right here." The creature responded with a soft hum, resting its head against her arm briefly. It was a gesture of trust, a way of acknowledging her presence and support. The medic felt a surge of emotion. This was no longer just a medical recovery. It was a bond forming between two beings who had found each other in the most unexpected circumstances. Night came again, and the medic prepared the tent for another long night. She arranged the blankets so the dragon could curl up comfortably and maintained a gentle heat source nearby. She stayed close, keeping a hand on its chest, feeling the steady rise and fall of its breathing. The creature twitched occasionally, but it seemed relaxed, no longer tense with fear. As she sat there, she reflected on the journey so far. She had found this creature abandoned, weak, and on the brink of death. With careful attention, patience, and trust, she had stabilized it. And now it was awake, responsive, and slowly regaining strength. More than that, it had begun to communicate in its own way, forming a silent connection with her that was growing. Stronger by the hour, she knew the next days would be challenging. Feeding it safely, helping it strengthen its wings and legs, and learning more about its behavior and needs would require vigilance and care. But for the first time, she felt a deep sense of hope. The dragon was fighting to survive, and she was there to guide it, not just as a medic, but as a guardian and companion. Late at night, she watched the dragon drift into sleep. Its small body curled close to her, tail gently brushing her arm. She whispered softly, "Rest now. You've come a long way today. Tomorrow we'll do even better." The dragon twitched slightly, a faint hum escaping its throat, almost like a reply. She leaned back against the tent, exhausted but satisfied. The creature was awake, alive, and beginning to trust her. It was a fragile beginning, but it was real. And in that quiet, still moment, she realized that she and the dragon had formed a bond that went beyond medicine, beyond survival. It was a connection built on trust, care, and shared resilience. A connection that neither of them could have expected when they first met in the cold wreckage. And though the journey ahead would be long and uncertain, she felt ready. Together, they were facing the challenge of recovery, step by step, day by day. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that the dragon might not just survive, but thrive with her by its side. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of burnt earth and lingering dust from the meteor storm. The medic had spent another restless night beside the dragon. It had moved slightly closer to her during sleep, curling its tail lightly around her arm as if seeking comfort. She had barely slept, but she didn't mind. The creature's safety and progress had become her focus, and every small improvement gave her a surge of hope. She was just beginning to think about preparing a small meal for it when a distant sound broke the quiet. A low hum, mechanical and steady, grew louder as it approached the outpost. Her heart skipped a beat. Rescue teams had been dispatched after the meteor storm, but she hadn't expected them to arrive so quickly. She glanced at the dragon, still curled on the blankets. Its glowing eyes followed her movements, alert but calm. It trusted her, and she knew she had to protect that trust. She carefully moved the dragon a little further back into the tent, shielding it from view. As the hum grew louder, the entrance flap was pulled aside, and several figures stepped into the clearing. They were clad in protective gear, carrying medical equipment and scanning devices. Their eyes widened as they saw the mess of broken terrain around the tent and the faint glow of the dragon inside. "What do we have here?" one of them asked, voice sharp with curiosity. The medic stepped forward, placing herself between the team and the dragon. "It's injured," she said calmly. "I found it after the storm. It needs care." The team members exchanged puzzled looks. One of them stepped closer, peering at the blankets. "It looks alive? Is that a dragon?" The medic nodded. "Yes, it's not human, but it's alive. I've been monitoring it, giving it warmth, hydration, and basic care. It's stable, but still weak. I need to continue observing it." There was a moment of silence as the team processed her words. Some members looked skeptical, others fascinated. The idea of an alien creature surviving the storm was incredible, but also alarming. "We need to sedate it," one of them finally said. "It could be dangerous. We can take it to the lab and stabilize it properly." The medic shook her head. "It's not dangerous. I've spent the night with it. It's scared and weak. If you try to sedate it now, you could harm it. It trusts me. That trust is fragile. I'm the only one who can keep it calm right now." Another member frowned. "We can't just let it stay here. It's an unknown species. Protocol says it must be secured and transported for safety." The medic took a deep breath, steadying her voice. "I understand your concern, but moving it abruptly could put it in serious danger. Look at it. It's already awake, alert, and responding to care. If we give it time, it will recover enough to be safely transported. I promise you, I'm not ignoring protocol. I'm following the creature's needs." There was a tense silence. Some team members looked at her with doubt, others at the dragon, which was now sitting upright slightly, watching the humans carefully. Its wings twitched faintly, and its tail coiled protectively near its body. It had sensed the presence of strangers, but it did not panic. That alone was proof that the medic had earned its trust. Finally, the leader of the rescue team stepped forward. "We will let you continue monitoring it for now," he said, his tone cautious but respectful. "But we will stay nearby. If anything goes wrong, we need to intervene immediately." The medic nodded, understanding their concern. "I will not take unnecessary risks. I just need space to help it regain strength." The team set up equipment nearby, scanning and monitoring from a safe distance. The medic returned to the dragon, gently placing a hand on its chest. The creature leaned slightly into her touch, releasing a soft hum that was almost like a sigh of relief. She whispered to it, "It's okay. They're here to help if needed, but I'm still with you." Hours passed, and the team observed quietly. The dragon's behavior remained calm, though it occasionally flinched at sudden movements. The medic continued her careful routine, providing small sips of water, monitoring breathing, adjusting blankets, and speaking softly to reassure it. Each time the dragon moved or stretched, she offered gentle encouragement, supporting its small limbs and wings. The rescue team grew more convinced as they watched. The creature's responses were deliberate and intelligent. It was learning, observing, and interacting in subtle ways. One of the technicians whispered to another, "Look at how it responds to her voice. It's almost like it understands her." The medic noticed the dragon's progress too. It was standing more steadily now, pushing up slightly with its legs and wings. Its tail flicked with growing strength, and its small claws dug gently into the blanket as it shifted its weight. Each small movement was a victory, proof that her care was making a difference. By evening, the dragon had gained enough confidence to explore its immediate surroundings in the tent. It nudged objects with its snout, tested the strength of its wings, and even attempted a short stretch. The medic stayed close, her hands ready to support it if needed, but letting it gain independence. She spoke softly all the while, narrating her actions and encouraging it to move. The rescue team watched in awe. "This is incredible," one whispered. "It's actually responding to care. Look at how it trusts her." "Yes," another replied. "If anyone else tried this, it would panic. She's earned its trust." As night fell, the medic prepared the tent for rest. The dragon curled up beside her, resting its head on her arm. Its breathing was steady, and its body felt warmer, stronger. She whispered, "You've done so well today. Sleep now. Tomorrow we'll do even better." The dragon responded with a soft hum, almost like a promise. The rescue team stayed outside, respecting the bond that had formed. They were there in case of emergencies, but they understood that forcing intervention now could undo the trust that had taken days to build. Slowly, one by one, they set up a safe perimeter around the tent and monitored from a distance, allowing the medic and the dragon their quiet moment of recovery. Hours later, the medic finally leaned back, exhausted but satisfied. She had guided the creature through another critical day, helping it regain strength and confidence while balancing the arrival of the rescue team. The bond between them had grown even stronger, reinforced by shared trust and careful attention. The dragon twitched slightly in its sleep, its tail brushing against her hand, and she smiled. She knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that together they could face it. The rescue team could provide support when needed, but the real healing, physical and emotional, was happening here. In the quiet moments of care, patience, and understanding Dot as she drifted into a light sleep, she felt the weight of responsibility, but also a deep sense of hope. The dragon was alive, growing stronger, and beginning to trust the humans around it. And in that delicate balance of trust and care, she realized that the hardest part of the storm had passed. The creature had survived, and she had proven that empathy, patience, and human connection could make all the difference, even for a being from another world. The following morning was calm, almost serene, a quiet contrast to the chaos of the meteor storm days before. The medic woke with the familiar ache in her body, but also with a sense of quiet satisfaction. She immediately checked on the dragon. It was awake, alert, and moving with more confidence than the day before. Its small wings stretched gently, and its tail swished slowly across the blankets. She could see subtle changes in its eyes: curiosity, awareness, and something she could only describe as recognition. She smiled softly. "Good morning," she whispered. "You're doing so well." The dragon tilted its head and let out a soft hum, almost like an answer. It moved closer to her, resting its small body against her side, seeking warmth and comfort. She marveled at the bond that had formed between them, something deeper than words, built on trust, patience, and care. The rescue team was nearby, quietly monitoring, but they had learned to respect the connection between the medic and the creature. The dragon responded to her presence in ways it never responded to anyone else. Even the slightest movement or sound from the team made it cautious, but the medic's voice or touch soothed it instantly. She knew the next steps were important. The dragon was strong enough now to attempt small movements, explore its surroundings, and even react to external stimuli. She guided it carefully, helping it stretch its legs and wings. Its movements were slow and tentative at first, but each time it attempted, it became steadier, stronger. She offered soft encouragement, whispering, "That's it. You're doing wonderfully. Take your time." The dragon began to experiment more with its balance. It shifted from side to side, lifted its head, and nudged objects around the tent. She watched closely, ready to support it if it faltered. Slowly, the creature gained confidence. Its tail lifted slightly, its wings flexed more naturally, and it began to observe the tent environment with growing curiosity. Hours passed, and the dragon started to interact with her in new ways. It nudged her hand with its snout, a gentle request for attention or reassurance. She laughed softly, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "You're learning," she said, "and I'm learning from you too." It was remarkable how intelligent and perceptive it was. Every gesture, every reaction, told her more about its personality, its moods, and its understanding of the world around it. The medic prepared a small feeding station with water and nutrients she had carefully measured to be safe. The dragon approached cautiously at first, but with her encouragement, it drank and consumed small amounts. She stayed close, speaking softly, letting it know that it could trust her completely. Each small act hydration, warmth, gentle touch was reinforcing its recovery and strengthening the bond between them. By evening, the dragon had made noticeable progress. It could stand for longer periods, shift its weight without losing balance, and even flap its wings slightly. The medic watched with pride and relief. She realized that the creature's resilience was extraordinary. It had survived exposure, trauma, and abandonment, and now, under her care, it was thriving. The rescue team observed quietly from a distance, impressed by the progress. One of them whispered to another, "It's responding to her in a way I didn't think was possible. It trusts her completely." Another nodded. "Yes, moving it now would undo all the progress. She's doing exactly what it needs." Night came again, and the medic prepared for rest. The dragon curled up beside her, resting its head on her arm. Its body was warmer, stronger, and its breathing was steady. She stroked its back gently, marveling at the delicate structure of its scales and wings. The creature released a soft, melodic hum, almost as if it were expressing contentment. She whispered, "You've come so far. I'm proud of you." The following days were a routine of careful care, observation, and slow strengthening. She guided the dragon through exercises to strengthen its legs, wings, and tail. She encouraged it to explore more of the tent, gradually increasing its confidence. The dragon responded to every gentle prompt, sometimes nudging her hand or resting against her arm for reassurance. Their silent communication grew more sophisticated. She could understand its moods, and it could understand her intentions. The bond between them was undeniable. The medic realized that this connection went beyond caregiver and patient. The dragon trusted her completely, seeking her presence and comfort, while she had grown to care for it deeply, protecting it as if it were her own. Finally, the day came when the rescue team confirmed that the dragon was strong enough for safe transport to a sanctuary. The medic felt a mixture of pride, relief, and sadness. She had nurtured it from the brink of death to strength, and now it would leave her care. She prepared the dragon, wrapping it carefully and speaking softly to calm it. It shifted its head toward her, letting out a soft hum, and she understood it as a gesture of gratitude. "You've done so well," she whispered. "It's time to go, but you'll be safe now. Remember what we've shared." The dragon's eyes met hers, glowing faintly, and it nudged her hand gently. She could feel the trust and recognition in that small gesture as the transport team approached. She carried the dragon carefully to the vehicle. It was alert, but calm, sensing her presence and reassurance. She whispered encouragement continuously, ensuring that the stress of the move did not overwhelm it. The dragon responded to her voice, keeping its body relaxed, and rested its head against her arm. Last time before they gently lifted it into the containment unit. The medic stood back as the vehicle prepared to leave. She watched the dragon settle in, its eyes following her until the doors closed. She felt a pang of sadness, but also pride. She had saved its life, and she had formed a bond that would last, even across distance. The rescue team nodded their respect. "You did something incredible," one said quietly. "It wouldn't have survived without you." She smiled softly, watching the vehicle disappear into the horizon. The dragon was safe, thriving, and had learned to trust humans because of her care. In that quiet moment, she realized that her actions had made a difference, not just for the dragon's life, but for the understanding between two very different worlds. The days after the dragon's departure were quieter, and she often thought of it. She imagined it in the sanctuary, exploring, regaining full strength, and growing into the magnificent creature it was meant to be. And every time she closed her eyes, she could see its small gestures of gratitude, the nudge, the hum, the curl of its tail around her hand. She understood something fundamental. Life, no matter how different, deserved care, patience, and trust. She had bridged a gap between two species, forming a connection that went beyond words, beyond expectation. The dragon had survived because she had acted, not out of duty alone, but out of empathy, courage, and love for life itself. And she knew, deep in her heart, that the dragon would remember her. That quiet trust, that bond forged in moments of fear, pain, and care, would last long after they were apart. She had given it life, but it had given her something equally precious, reminder that compassion and understanding could cross even the widest divides. Connecting beings in ways nothing else could dot in the end. She smiled, her eyes tracing the horizon where the vehicle had disappeared. A life saved, a bond formed, and a future full of hope for both the dragon and herself. She whispered softly, even though it was gone from sight, "Be safe, be strong, and never forget that you are not alone."